What's up, YouTube? My name is Gary, and this is Become the Music. Welcome back to the channel on a very special and a little bit unfortunate episode of Become the Music as we pay tribute to the man, the myth, the legend that was Ozzy Osbourne, the late frontman for Black Sabbath and, of course, his own solo career and reality TV show The Osbournes and Ozzfest and all this stuff. The guy had a life. Wow, he really lived. Born in Birmingham in 1948 and started playing with the boys from Black Sabbath in a blues band called Earth. They were playing clubs around England and doing cover tunes and stuff like that, and then decided to get a little bit more serious, and the rest is history. So what I've read over the years, I've been a Black Sabbath fan since literally like 1974, 73, 74, somewhere in that. My best friend David, when I was growing up, had an older brother named Tim, and Tim was a music fan, and he had a huge record collection, Led Zeppelin and The Who and all this stuff, Iron Butterfly and Black Sabbath. And one day we were looking through his records, my friend Dave and I, and we pulled out this album, Master of Reality. And we're like, oh, that's a nice looking cover, let's put this on. And proceeded to get our brains melted into another reality. And yeah, ever since then, I've never been the same. So Ozzy and Black Sabbath have been a huge part of my life for literally 50 years, and very formative in my choice to be a musician and the type of music that I play. So Ozzy, went to school with Tony Iommi and the guitar player from Black Sabbath. And they didn't get along. I think Tony used to beat him up or something like that. And one day Tony had an ad out, or they were looking for a singer or something, and they saw an ad that said something like, Ozzy Zig is looking for a gig. And Tony's like, I only know one Ozzy. It can't be the same guy. He's not a singer. Turns out it was. One thing led to another. They started gigging together, jamming together, and then the fate would have it that Ozzy and Tony Iommi and Geezer Butler, the bass player, were watching a horror movie, and they said, isn't it interesting that people will pay money to be scared? And that was the impetus for them to start writing dark, heavy music that touched on themes of war and alienation and drug use and depression and all of this stuff. Having said that, a lot of people think that that's what Sabbath is all about, and they have a very ill-deserved reputation for being Satanists or whatever, which they're not. Geezer Butler's actually Catholic and a vegan since 1957, which is interesting, and he never uses profanity. Anyways, they decided, hey, let's write some heavy, dark music and see what happens. Things happened. So while we're talking about Ozzy and the band, I thought I'd do something that I had an idea for a long time ago, which is to rank the Ozzy era Black Sabbath albums. Ozzy got kicked out of the band around 79 for drug abuse, and he was a little fed up with the direction the band was going in. Tony Iommi, the songwriter, guitar player, kind of de facto leader of the band, was trying to take them in strange new directions, as Barney Gumble says with Barbershop Quartet in The Simpsons. I'm taking Barbershop in strange new directions. Anyways, bad Barney imitation, but Ozzy wanted to just do straight ahead kick-ass rock and roll, and Tony was trying to move the band away from their hardcore blues-based, they weren't blues anymore, but heavy rock sound that is rooted in the blues, and get them into more progressive stuff and things like that. And Ozzy wasn't having it. He was not into that. And the band was falling apart, and a lot of drug and alcohol use in that band, very, very severe. A couple of them have been through rehab in their lives, including Mr. Osbourne, John Michael Osbourne, who we're talking about tonight. So he passed away yesterday. That would be July 23rd. Yeah, July 22nd, pardon me. Today's the 23rd. And he struggled with Parkinson's for a long time. And he luckily got to do a final performance on July 5th. They put together a huge concert in Birmingham, where they're from. And all kinds of bands like Tool and Metallica and just, tons of famous people, Guns N' Roses, whatever, all these guys showed up and played a few Sabbath songs and gave a tribute to Black Sabbath, because Sabbath is literally a band that launched a million other bands, and everybody is influenced by Black Sabbath, right? So they did this final farewell concert, and luckily they put the whole original band back together, including drummer Bill Ward, who'd been out of the fold for 20 years. And so they got up and played a few songs, and Ozzy, because of his Parkinson's, had to sing sitting in a kind of a big throne they made for him. Some of you may have seen this on YouTube. I'm sure you did. I didn't see it live. I was actually in Boulder, Colorado, watching Fish play. But I did see it on YouTube later that night. So all that said, let us dive in, and I'm going to talk about the Black Sabbath albums with Ozzy, the first 8, not 13 that they did later, but just the first 8. So this is my copy of the Black Box, a much coveted box set that has a DVD and all kinds of lovely stuff in it, and you can't have it. No. This is remastered versions of the first 8 Sabbath albums, and it sounds freaking phenomenal. It's so good. So I'm just going to pull out the covers and show you what the CDs look like here. So Ozzy's haunting vocals were once referred to as the voice of doom, which is pretty accurate considering Black Sabbath is the blueprint for not just heavy metal, but doom and stoner metal. So as mentioned, Ozzy was fired from Sabbath in '79 because of substance abuse issues. And then he launched a massively successful solo career, pretty much to everyone's surprise because he was such a mess. And it helped that he had guitar genius Randy Rhoads playing and writing with him. I was fortunate enough to see that tour, the first tour, the Blizzard of Oz tour for the first album. And got Ozzy's autograph, which was really cool. Didn't meet Randy, but Ozzy was doing an autograph session. And I saw that first tour with Motorhead on the Ace of Spades tour opening up for them. What a show. One of the favorite shows I've ever seen in my life. Of all the thousands of concerts I've seen, that was one of the best. So then Ozzy went on to have his reality TV show, The Osbournes. A couple of little known facts are that he worked in a slaughterhouse before his music career took off. He was once arrested for robbing a clothing store and spent time in jail for it. And very interestingly, he had a rare genetic mutation that helped his body process drugs and alcohol more efficiently than the average person. So some of you who watch the channel may know that I am a medical professional in my day job. That's my actual career. So this is really interesting to me. So a discovery was made during genome sequencing for a scientific study. These guys wanted to study Ozzy, actually. They were studying other people. But so in 2010, the researchers from a genomics company analyzed Ozzy's DNA and found that he carries some rare and unusual genetic traits. One particularly interesting discovery was a unique mutation near the ADH4 gene, which doesn't really mean much, but it plays a role in producing alcohol dehydrogenase 4. Alcohol dehydrogenase 4 is a protein involved in breaking down alcohol in the body. So this mutation he had may have influenced how efficiently his body processed alcohol, which potentially contributed to his ability to tolerate heavy drinking without, really severe liver damage. And it also showed variations in several genes related to addiction and how the body metabolizes substances like weed and opioids and stimulants. So according to the analysis, Ozzy's genetic profile suggests a significantly increased likelihood of developing alcohol dependency, along with elevated risks for cocaine and other addictions. And he did suffer from these for most of his life. And these findings can maybe offer a glimpse into how genetics might have influenced his lifestyle. So, you may have heard stories of him biting the head off a bat, which was true. Someone threw a bat on stage. He thought it was rubber, bit it off. It was a real bat. He had to go get a rabies shot. There's a story of him meeting up with the guys from Motley Crue around a swimming pool in Hollywood or something, and they were staying in a hotel or whatever on tour, and they were trying to outdo each other with gross outs and stunts and whatever. And Ozzy snorted a line of ants. There was a line of ants crawling across the concrete, and he snorted a line of ants. Although one of the guys in Motley Crue said that's actually not true. Another thing that did happen is he got arrested for urinating on the Alamo in Texas. So let's get on with ranking the Ozzy era Sabbath albums, the first 8. Number 8 for me is actually going to be Technical Ecstasy. I like it, just less than the others. Not much that's really all that captivating on here, aside from the second track, You Won't Change Me, which is like dark and brooding and doomy and has great synthesizer work and features maybe Tony Iommi's best recorded guitar solo. Pretty cool album. There's some interesting stuff on here. Not the best Sabbath album, though, I'll just say that. Number 7 for me is going to be the next album, Never Say Die. This is the last album with Ozzy on it until he came back in the band many years later. So it has some very cool composition and experimentation. There's great melodies. This album and Technical Ecstasy never really get a lot of respect from Sabbath fans, but they're pretty good overall, aside from a few missteps. It's a band falling apart at this point, basically. But Sabbath was such an amazing band and killer musicians that it was pretty tough to not have at least some worthwhile music on any of their albums. So the title track was a single that did kind of okay. Junior's Eyes is good. Shockwave. There's some good stuff on here. Johnny Blade, Air Dance, all that stuff. Swinging the Chain. Number 6, which may be surprising to a lot of people, is Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. Another killer album cover. I love that artwork. It's amazing. This album is Tony Iommi's favorite, but I don't know what it is. Something about it doesn't capture me like the next 5 in the list. Having said that, Spiral Architect is fantastic, with probably my all-time favorite lyrics of any Black Sabbath song. Geezer Butler, the bass player, is one of the best metal lyricists ever, and Ozzy really stands out vocally on this album. He was an excellent singer. I mean, this album is it smokes. Abracadabra, the title track, Killing Yourself to Live, all that stuff, Really, really great stuff. Rick Wakeman from Yes guests on keyboards on there. So, number 5 is the debut album, Black Sabbath, self-titled. A few weak spots. Again, another great cover. Love that cover. It's so spooky, and you can see there's a crow hanging out up over here. That photograph is just so spooky. It's like, what's about to happen? You got this witch on the cover. Is she going to drag you into this castle? And who knows, right? So there's a few weak spots. I do like the long jam that's on side 2, but Tony's unaccompanied solo, I think, is kind of unneeded. I think they were just sort of filling some space. There's a few missed notes on the album, which could have been redone, in my opinion, but, it is what it is. Also, Ozzy sings kind of very noticeably flat in a couple of places. But, of course, they're super young. This was recorded on a shoestring budget in like 12 hours over 2 days or something. So, I can't fault it for having a few flaws. It is one of the greatest and most influential debut albums of all time, often credited with inventing heavy metal. I love the production. Tony's guitar just has such a unique sound. It's heavy and distorted, but loads of clarity. And Bill's drums were recorded really well. And number 4 is Volume 4. absolute monster opening track with Wheels of Confusion, one of my top Sabbath tunes. I think the production on here is not as good as the first three records, but there's an appeal to it in its sludginess. Tomorrow's Dream, FX is a little, guitar effect, instrumental piece, Supernaut, Snowblind, of course. This album is famous inside. It says something like, thanks to the great Coca-Cola Company of Los Angeles. This album was recorded with buckets of, the devil's marching powder around, right? Great album, love it. Of course, I love this album. Play it a lot. The last two songs, St. Vitus's Dance and Under the Sun, to me, they kind of bring the album down a bit. I think Under the Sun has the worst Tony Iommi guitar line ever. He plays this kind of weird little ascending solo line to break up the verses, and I've never liked it. But the riffs are killer, like the rest of the song, and the last half of the song just smokes. So that's number 4, volume 4. Number 3, which will probably get me a lot of flack, Paranoid. I know I'll get flamed for it, but I'm not as big a fan of the title track, Paranoid, as most people. It's fine, but to me, no more than that. Maybe I've just heard it too often, or it seems it's the only song that gets radio play or whatever. By the way, the band hated this cover. They think it had nothing to do with the album. They're like, we don't know why there's a guy waving a sword on here. To me, I actually love this cover a lot. It's like, is it a dream? Is it a drug trip? You're paranoid of what this guy's going to do to you, whatever. So, so much on this album. To my mind, War Pigs is still the heaviest song ever written. Electric Funeral, that opens side 2, is not my favorite Sabbath track, except the fast section is really killer. And the other thing about this album is Bill Ward is one of my favorite drummers. He's a beast of a drummer, one of my favorite players. In the context of a song, I always thought his drum solos kind of suck. Sorry, Bill, I love you. His solo albums are great, by the way, and he's a killer artist and a really interesting dude. But that drags the album down for me a little bit. That song is called Rat Salad. It holds the album back a little bit, but although musically it's great, and I love the guitar solo, just drum solo. What's the point? I guess because John Bonham had done Moby Dick and Ginger Baker had done Toad, I think it's called, with Cream. Geezer's bass tone and playing are absolutely stellar across the whole Paranoid album, though. Like, wow. Incredible production, real step up from the first album. And Ozzy sings great. Constant touring brought his chops and pitch into line, so his vocals are like spot on. And I love the chance that they took with the ballad Planet Caravan, a real trippy, spacey track with a nice jazz solo from Tony. I do think Volume 4 is a bit more consistent overall, but the strength of War Pigs, Hand of Doom, Fairies Wear Boots, and Iron Man elevates Paranoid. Plus, its legacy and influence was massive. By the way, Hand of Doom, hugely underrated Sabbath track. Number 2, Sabotage. This album, for some reason, gets kind of crapped on and overlooked by a lot of Sabbath fans who they talk about, oh, I love the first 5 Sabbath albums, and it's like, where's the love, man? Huge album for me. God, there's just so much going on. It's so creative. It's their most progressive record, sounding like nobody else ever has before or since. And look at this cover, how can you not like that? It's just Ozzy, just like, yeah, whatever, man. Bill Ward in his red tights, it's hilarious. And of course, they're reflecting backwards. So I was listening to this one day last summer, lying in the sun. Whoops. And I had the lyrics. I was playing on my phone, on headphones. I had the lyrics scrolling on Apple Music. Simply phenomenal writing. Geezer was brilliant, incredible lyricist. And overall, I feel this album is Ozzy's best vocal performance of his entire career. He's just killing it. His range, his power, his pitch. And don't forget, this is long before pitch correction and other digital vocal treatments were a thing. Sabotage, progressive, yeah, amazing. So number one, because I'm wearing the shirt, you can probably already guess, it has to be Master of Reality for me. One of my favorite albums by anyone for most of my life. And I mentioned before, when I was about 11, my best friend Dave and I pulled this out of his older brother's album collection and put it on. The first heavy music I'd ever heard, really, and quite an introduction. Every riff, every note, just an absolute monster. As far as I know, the first recording tuned down to C sharp. So what that means for you non-musicians, most albums are tuned to, A440, which is a standard tuning you use so that all the instruments are tuned the same to a piano. And then the lowest string on the guitar is an E. Sabbath dropped the tuning down 3/2 steps to C sharp, which makes it thick and full and evil sounding, right? Also, as far as I know, one of the first uses of double kick drum in rock. There is one earlier, I can't remember who it is off the top of my head, but great stuff. Bill Ward is just on fire. The whole album, the whole band is just ridiculous. The album's a sledgehammer. It really is. It's just a sledgehammer. It launched a million doom and stoner bands, and so influential. I actually listened to it today at the beach. Maybe Tony's best recorded guitar tone also. And can't fault it. Love it, love it, love it. So drop some comments below. This is all subjective, of course. It's just my opinion. But your opinion's wrong. No, of course not. Drop some comments below. Where would you rank the first 8 Sabbath albums, or even 6 if you just want to go there, if you don't want to count Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die. So, Mr. Osbourne, thank you for a life of entertaining shenanigans and incredible music. I mean, I like his solo stuff too, don't get me wrong, especially the first 2 albums with Randy Rhoads. I saw Ozzy solo many times. I saw Sabbath a few times. I think I saw Sabbath like 5-6 times, something like that, and Ozzy about the same. Yeah, man, the guy he lived hard and fast, but he had a good life in the end. He had a family, a loving family, and kids, and he went out 17 days after his last performance. That's pretty crazy. Just a bit of trivia, Lemmy from Motorhead also went out 17 days after his last performance, apparently, but that doesn't mean anything. We're talking about Ozzy here. So Ozzy, thank you, sir. Rest well. He gave it his all. He really did. Here's a guy that just I'm just going to go for it and live my life, and I don't care who thinks different of me or whatever. I was speaking earlier about Sabbath's reputation for having demonic overtones. They played into that because, rock and roll is entertainment. It's theater, right? And, they're like, wow, let's make it seem like we're like this or whatever. From all accounts, Ozzy was a really gentle guy, very lovable, kind of goofy guy and all this kind of stuff. You see interviews with him and footage of him and stuff. He's a funny dude. He was a funny dude. So, Ozzy, that's what I have for you. And that's what I have for you, the viewers. Peace out. I will wish you a good night. And I'm going to drop a link to my new channel. I've mentioned this in a couple other videos. I have a medical and health channel. So this is a shameless self-promotion. Please stop by and check it out. And subscribe if you so desire. And there's some interesting health stuff on there. So, that's me. That's Ozzy. Yeah, what a life. Thank you so much for joining me. I will be dropping some reactions and so forth very soon, so please stay tuned for that. Some other stuff coming up on the channel. I'm going to be slightly tweaking, changing some of the things about the channel, going in a few different areas, which I've mentioned before. But Black Sabbath, first 8 albums ranked. Ozzy, incredible life. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So much joy and entertainment for 50 years of my life and hopefully 50 more. I listen to Sabbath a lot to this day. Huge stuff. Peace out. Take care. Good night. Enjoy your summer.